Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. Hey, all you minties, Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And today I'm going to give you my overview of the Detective Chimp Casebook Hardcover Edition. This is one of the most interesting books to be released, not just this month, but this whole year. So join me. Okay, let's go ahead and start. The Detective Chimp Casebook. This is one of the most interesting releases, and I say that because here lately, DC has been doing collections of Golden Age stuff, and of course some Silver Age stuff. And you have obscure characters like Deadman and the Spectre, and Phantom Stranger, which finally came out. This, I think, was originally solicited as a big, thick trade paperback many years ago, and then it got canceled, and then people thought it was going to be an omnibus, including myself, and here we are years later with an actual release. This is a standard size hardcover, meaning that it is smaller in scale than the deluxe editions or omnibus editions. So this is the trim size of a trade paperback or a single issue. And what also adds to the mystery of this particular collection is this cover, because that is the cover from the Helmet of Dr. Fate, the little miniseries by Brian Boland. But I guess if you're going to showcase Detective Chimp on a cover, Brian Boland is the way to go. So you have the Detective Chimp Casebook, the DC logo, as chronicled by John Broome and Carmine Infantino, both the creators of the character. The Detective Chimp Casebook, Broome, Infantino, and then the DC logo. And from the files of Edward Chase, that's the sheriff right there, of Oskaloosa County, Florida, this giving you a little synopsis as to what kind of stories you're going to find in here, ISBN and the retail price of the book being $29.99. Let's look underneath the dust jacket. I really like that. That looks awesome. But I'll talk about that here in a second. Here we have a quote from Detective Chimp. Very witty. And then praise for Detective Chimp over here on the right-hand side from people like Bill Willingham, Matt Fraction, and James Tynion IV. And Onga the Elephant. Not an Eisner Award-winning author. Okay, that's actually pretty witty. I like that. But that's your dust jacket. And underneath the dust jacket is this awesome design. Kind of reminds me of course it's on purpose, right? Like a classic book you would have on your bookshelf. Like with Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. Even, Detective Chimp actually wears that deerstalker hat and the magnifying glass there. Detective Chimp Casebook and the DC logo. And then, yeah, even that. Maybe they could have added some cloth to this, make it look more like one of those books, those classics, if you will, that people have on their shelves, including my wife, who's a big fan of Sherlock Holmes, even long before Benedict Cumberbatch played him. All right, we're going to open this up and talk about the type of stories you're going to find in here, and also talk about the build of the book, too. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Now, I mentioned the Helmet of Dr. Fate, but those stories can be found here, including the Detective Chimp story. Okay, so love the end sheets here. Very, very classy. And this right here, the framing, the Detective Chimp Casebook. And here you have John Broome and Mike Tiefenbacher as the writers, Carmine Infantino, Erwin Hassan, and then, of course, your inkers here, and your colorists and letterers. And the cover, the collection of the cover artist, which was Brian Boland. And then under here, under the case log, unless otherwise noted, all of Bobo T. Chimpanzee's adventures chronicled by John Broome and Carmine Infantino. So, unless it's noted, and then they do note it, and they tell you when the book came out. Like this one is in August of 1952, December 1952. So we go from 1952 all the way until he kind of disappeared off the pages of DC Comics in 1959 to the return in 1981. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But what, first of all, is collected in here? So this collects the Tarzan 231, 234, and 235, the Adventures of Rex the Wonder Dog, 4, 6 through 46, Who's Who, the Definitive Directory of the DC Universe, and this is all material from, by the way, Amazing World of DC Comics #1 and DC Comics Presents #35 and DC Special #1. So we kick it off with Rex the Wonder Dog #4 and material from there, and we meet Detective Chimp. Now, if you're used to Detective Chimp from the world of Shadow Pact, or you're used to Detective Chimp from the world of Justice League Dark, or even the Helmet of Dr. Fate, this is a lot different. This is, I want to say, being 1952 until 1959, it's almost borderline Golden Age, Silver Age. So please, in the comments down below, if you know, is this Silver Age or is it considered Golden Age still? I think it's that very fine line, like towards the end of the Golden Age. So in the first issue, we meet Sheriff Chase, who is a sheriff in Florida. And he talks about how Bobo T. Chimpanzee, who just happens to wear a deerstalker hat, not really so much there, but later on, became, I don't really consider him a pet, more of his family. And as you find out, Bobo was actually owned by Fred Thorpe, and Fred Thorpe was murdered, and his niece Alice and Bobo were the only two people there, or the two living beings that, I can't say people, right? Because he's an ape. But anyway, two living beings that were there when Fred was killed. So Bobo is smart enough to know who killed Fred, and he's trying to give Sheriff Chase a lead, like where's the person that killed him. And then Sheriff Chase is like, well, it's just a chimpanzee. What am I even doing following a lead from a chimpanzee? So he goes and tells his secretary, Pete Drummond, about the chimpanzee and Alice. Pete ends up going back to the scene of the crime and tells Alice to leave the house, and he's going to take care of Bobo, the chimpanzee. Now, here's where you see that Bobo the chimpanzee actually has thought bubbles. So he thinks in human speech. He can't talk in human speech, but he thinks it, and he can try to communicate with other people. So this is where he helps solve the crime of who murdered Fred Thorpe, and it is Fred Drummond. So he gets Fred to confess in a really unique way. He gets Fred to chase him outside of the property, and Fred chases him, and then when he goes back, he ends up unleashing Tombo right here, which is a huge ape, and puts the fear of God into this character of Drummond, and makes him just admit the crime that he committed and why he killed Fred Thorpe. And that's how Detective Chimp came to be the right hand ape of the Sheriff Chase. Now here he's sporting his deerstalker hat, just like Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. And the rest of this series is pretty much him solving little mysteries. Again, not able to communicate, but able to think in human thoughts, in English. The introductions are usually done by Sheriff Chase. I say usually, and then from time to time, Detective Chimp actually introduces his own story. Actually, let's get to it. And you start seeing an evolution from Infantino, like the way that Bobo looks. He starts to develop a longer snout and having more of a cartoony look to him. And I kind of like that. And I'll be honest, I skimmed through this one. I've only read about 10 of these cases because I wanted to just showcase exactly what this was about. And I had never read any of these stories. They're quick reads because they're all material from the Rex the Wonder Dog's backup stories is what they are. But let me see if I can find the issue, for example. So you have like I mentioned, Sheriff Chase introducing the story, and this one's called The Treasure of the Thunder Island. And it's usually him trying to, or Detective Chimp trying to figure out, somebody that robbed a bank, somebody that stole some kind of diamond, somebody that murdered somebody, and sometimes Detective Chimp actually dresses like a human being. Yeah, for example, here, Detective Chimp. Hello there, readers. this is Bobo. So this is the first time we actually see him talking to you. Because, like I said, he thinks in human thoughts, but he doesn't really communicate with humans. But this one is an introduction by him saying that he's given Sheriff Chase a break, and he's introducing his own story. And it is very formulaic. It's a lot of stories like that. And I gotta say, I didn't know what to expect because I hadn't read anything outside of when I first noticed him was in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then he was in the DC Secret Origins book, and then, my goodness, I think he was missing for so many years after that, and then he showed up in the Day of Judgment storyline. That's where the Spectre pretty much was trying to do away with magic, and he forms his own badass team of magicians, so that all becomes the Shadow Pact. And then after they disbanded, he did the whole thing with the Helmet of Fate, at one time being offered the Helmet of Fate, and he refused it, and but by then, he's a different character. Like, he can talk, and he drinks, and he smokes, mainly due to the fact that even though he's a detective during this time, he couldn't charge people because he couldn't take them to court because he's not a human being. And I'm not making that up. That's actually canon. But then, yes, he ended up joining the Justice League Dark, and he was in the Oblivion Bar, just a bar, not a barn. But that's pretty much most of my knowledge of Detective Chimp. I had no idea that it started off like this. That, he belonged to somebody, Thorpe. Yes, he found him in Africa. I know that some of the stories have been retconned because I remember in the Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Secret Origins, I believe is what it was, that they said he was abducted by aliens, but then later on they retconned that. Okay, and then we get to this right here, which is part of the DC Comics Presents number 35, where him and Rex the Wonder Dog have an adventure that will change him, though, where he will gain the ability to communicate with humans eventually, and that all has to do with the Fountain of Youth. I love this. This is the Ape Files, where you get a cover gallery. So it's issues of Tarzan. And the Brian Boland Helmet of Dr. Fate. Detective Chimp number 1. The actual pencil art and then the finish work. And then this, of course, being the directory of the DC Universe. Telling you more about him, how he came from Africa, how Thorpe put him on the circus, and then eventually he left the circus, and then, of course, Thorpe got killed, and he met Sheriff Chase. And then your humble chroniclers, and then your end sheets. So this book has 280 pages. Let's look at the binding and talk about the build. So it is glued binding, and the paper stock they're using is this matte paper stock. But there are no spread pages, really. Actually, there's no spread pages. There's mainly sometimes splash pages, but they're usually frames that you're looking at here. And even in the back. So even if there is some gutter loss, it's very minor because the pages are broken up by frames. But that's it. That, as they say, is Detective Chimp Casebook. If you're interested in purchasing this book, don't forget to check out our sponsor, cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count and build of this hardcover. Let me know in the comments down below if this is your era of comics, if you didn't even know who Detective Chimp was, or if you've heard of Detective Chimp but I've only read him in books like Shadow Pact or Justice League Dark, or you've only seen him in the cartoons. I would love to know all those comments down below. Smash that like button on the way out. Check us out on Patreon and Spreadshop. Amazing ways to support the channel. Everyone stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.